can't pay for it, but the association pay for the signs. We voted okay. I'm like, there's nothing on there. Even the association told us as the association go, by how much per 100,000.
I did all that.
Mayor, I'll need that, yeah.
Got it.
Awesome, thank you.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
There we go. Hello, Aaron.
Vincenzo.
Problem with this drive.
It should be okay, they all do that.
I'll talk to you more about it. Sorry.
See, I knew you probably gave it, but I'm like, I don't know what's that.
So February 8th meeting, and then water bill memo.
Ready.
We're ready, okay.
You're live and recording.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Harvard Administration Committee meeting of February 8th, 2024. It looks like all of the committee members are present, plus some of our wonderful staff and our mayor and clerk and village administrator, city administrator, sorry, Lee. I've been working with the Village of Johnsburg recently, and it's a village administrator there, so. Yeah, so are there any public comments? Okay, no. So looks like the first discussion item is water billing rates.
Yes.
So
So at the
I think
last
that's
meeting,
Deb.
we had I had a presentation, and we didn't make any decisions. We were lacking a quorum, but we did have a in-depth conversation, and a couple of the requests were to come back with some specific information on what I thought that we needed. So we did a little bit more research in the past month, and I sent out this memo to you all about a week ago, I think, just so you'd have a chance to read it and look it over, so it wasn't brand new tonight. So basically what we did, and this was a group effort with Rob, Jeanette, Lou, all of us trying to research a database that none of us are like 100% familiar with, but I think we figured it out. We have about 2,816 active usage accounts per our billing cycle. 50 to 60 additional flat fee users are not current, or users, services are not currently billed. For whatever reason, and we're still kind of in the process of researching that, some of these locations are turned off. Some of these locations are demos because of fire or other vacancies, and some don't have meters at all, and we're still trying to figure out where they combine somewhere else, like if they were a rental property, right? So we have a pretty good idea of how many of those we could start billing for the flat fees, which is something we discussed, because I think the argument was that the infrastructure's there. It's ready for hookup. It's just not being used right now. And I know there were a couple homes that we were reading the comments on where they go away for the winter. They have their water turned off and they don't get a bill. And then they come back in the spring or whatever. So they're not paying for anything in that off time, but if the infrastructure were to need maintenance on our side, we would still be responsible for maintaining that. So we'll have a more solid number on that, but we have a pretty good estimate. We have 225 average users per billing cycle that are billed under 3 units. So one of the discussions we had last month too was that we have a base user fee of $24.80 currently right now with our current rates, and that's for 0 to 2.66 units. So any residents in town or businesses that don't use any water or up to 2.66 units of water get charged $24.80 no matter what. In addition to that, they get charged the maintenance fee, the infrastructure, the EPA, and the tax. So we had discussed the possibility of changing that ordinance to bill per unit instead of that base fee. And in discussion and kind of speculation, I think we determined that the original reason for that base fee way back in the day was because we didn't have a flat fee for maintenance and infrastructure. So we were able to budget based on, we're gonna get 2480 no matter what, and then per unit after that. We don't know if that's the
That's our
case, but that's our speculation.
I think it's safe.
So in regards to that, if you look at the comparison to other communities, most of the communities they have the base rate, but they don't have flat fees because they don't have the maintenance and infrastructure projects going on that we have. So essentially, you could argue we have 3 flat fees. We have the 2480 and then the maintenance and infrastructure. So Alderman Gorman wanted us to check to see how hard it would be to change our system to bill by the unit and eliminate the 2480 base rate. Very easy, it turned out. We were thinking that it was going to be an expensive reprogramming of the software, and it may or may not be worth it. But through that research, BS&A, who's our current software provider, charges us an annual fee per our service agreement. And in that annual fee, we get unlimited work orders and service calls, basically, assistance. This would just simply be a matter of them remoting in and changing our database for us through that current service agreement. So it's not free, but we're paying for that service anyway. So there's no additional charge to that.
It's not like they have to do some coding or
Correct,
something.
yeah. So, that's another option, and that would help alleviate some of those lower end users that are using less than 3 units or less than 2.66. And then again, as it was argued that your water billing rate is based on your usage. You control that. So that would help alleviate some of that burden for some folks that don't use so much. Okay, so any questions about that? Okay, so based on all of that research, and then looking into the things that we've got coming up, and I'll just go through those real quick again. We're going to be requesting a +1 employee at the plant because the operations have increased. We, of course, have the loan repayment, which we did finally get a solid amortization schedule on that. Yay. So we know what we're looking at. And just maintaining the maintenance for the unforeseen or for some of the projects that we're going to have coming up with the wells. There's some I&I things, some other things that we, should get done to help with our system. I have recommended that we increase usage fees 6% over the next 3 years. This is currently what we do now and have done, I think, for the past 2 cycles, 6, and I believe 2 cycles ago it was 5, and 5.
That's correct.
Then this
5,
past
5,
year,
and 6,
6. So this would be again 6. So we would still be raising the rates every year, but we're keeping that percentage the same as it is now. So that's the first recommendation, and I put on the per unit increase over 3 years, 988, 1047, and 1110, and then the estimated revenue that would generate is the bullet point 3, or the check mark 3 under that bullet point. Okay. Then the final recommendation would be for flat fees. And there's going to be some decision-making here on your end. I'm recommending we increase infrastructure from 25 to 35, and this is strictly to cover the IEPA loan payment. We'll still fall a bit short, but with the 6%, as well as some of the funding that we pre-spent that we've gotten back with our grant, I'm confident we'll be okay with that 35 for the next 3 years. The EPA fee of $1.06 will remain the same because that permit fee has not changed. That's strictly, we're just strictly collecting that to meet our EPA permit fee every year, and that's it. There's no additional revenue generated. That's basically in and out. And then for the maintenance fee, you'll have 3 choices. Well, you have more than 3 choices, but three recommendations. We can remain at 20 for the next 3 years and not change that. So your flat fee would only go up by $10 with the 20 and the 35 combined. This is feasible for maintaining what we have now and doing a little bit of extra. So we can make this work. We just wouldn't be able to do a ton more. We could increase the maintenance fee to $25, and this would allow us to be able to get more future improvements done. Or we could do a step increase where it remains at 20 this year, 22 next year, and 25 the third year, and that would get us to that point where we could do a little this year, a little bit more next year, and a little bit more the year after that. So that's going to be a decision that you folks need to make. I can make $20 work, but if you want to do a little bit more, then we should look at an increase.
Yeah, and it would be nice I would like to know what the little bit more would include.
And that's something we can talk about at the budget workshop. There's some, and I also included, and I was just going to mention this under new business because I didn't have it in the original packet. I just handed it out a few minutes ago with the colored copy. That's just an update on our capital improvement plan, which we adopted in 2022. So we're going into our second full year of that. And we've gotten quite a bit done. The red is the incomplete, the green is the completed, and then anything black is either ongoing year after year or is in progress at some level. But if you look at the wastewater, there's quite a few things in that department that are still in the red, basically incomplete. So that's one thing we should probably take a look at. And those decisions to do those projects, obviously they're on the 5-year plan. You know, we would have to pick and choose, but those are some of the things to give you the idea of what a little bit more would look like. And then Rob and Jim are going to talk in a few minutes about the lead water, which is another project that we're going to have to look at. And I thought I&I was on the agenda, but it's not. So that's another, the inflow and infiltration issue and the smoke testing and that kind of thing is also on the radar as well. But that's in the capital improvement plan. So, but that gives you a good, quick overview of what some of those extras would be. So yeah, those are the recommendations. And then the last section, I just gave you a snapshot of what a 0-unit user, 1-unit user would look like if we kept maintenance fee at 20 but did the other increases that I suggest. And it's interesting in that the current minimum bill is actually more than what their increased bill would be the first year based on the by unit rate versus the flat base rate. And then, the average user that we have, I went through the last 2 billing cycles. The winter billing cycle is probably our best source to look at because that's going to be the bill that's probably the billing cycle that's going to be the least amount of revenue. We have a lot of snowbirds. You have, obviously people aren't filling their pools. It's not summer, they're not watering. That's the actual billing cycle that I looked at. The average user uses 13 units. So I did an average on the last bullet point of what their bill would look like with the increases, but maintaining maintenance at $20. So you just basically add $5 times 6 months to that if you were going to go to that full $5 increase.
I definitely like the idea of going forward with the infrastructure on the properties that are currently not paying infrastructure. At least if it's feasible, obviously on properties where there's nothing there, or if there's no meter, then obviously
Right.
we do. But whether a person's in town or not, if I leave for a month to go on vacation somewhere and my line blows up, the city still has to dig in there and fix it. So I think that's totally fair.
Now, I did have one question. We're not suggesting to add improved lots with no housing on it as being built.
No.
Only those
No.
that have a building on it.
Correct. Alderman Gorman, I believe, has one of those properties, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
He's actually on the list. And actually,
I'm just saying, all the subdivisions that have, empty
correct,
lots.
right.
The landowner is not going to be charged for this.
No, I believe the data that we have is based on locations that used to be built and are not built anymore,
Okay.
is what what the,
I was just wanted to make sure we were defining,
right.
you know,
Yes,
who we
yeah,
were gonna
that's
add,
important,
or
sure.
who we're considering to add.
Essentially, it becomes, you know, it's mostly like a house where we have record that they have a water meter, but for some reason it was marked inactive, so whether that be, house burnt down, abandoned, you know, tenant situation, where, well, we just called, City Hall and said, hey,
There's some.
figuring out which one you need.
So established structures.
Okay.
Yeah, or properties.
Say burnt down, you mean like still standing or ones that are knocked down?
It could even be, you know, it could just be completely burnt down or, you know, uninhabitable because of damage where, you know, at their request, we at some point it put the account into inactive status, so they weren't.
How many are like actually burnt down the ground, not just standing there, not demoed yet?
That,
We have a whole spreadsheet,
Is it green grass now in those lots?
oh, I don't know.
Cause I'm trying to figure out why would you charge for that? There's no house right there. Yes, there's a meter, there's the line going there, but it's not being used for water. I get, if there's a house there, I get for charging for that. But there's no house there, I don't know why we have to charge them when they're not gonna use that water.
I think generally speaking, this is just to try to figure out why so many of these are marked inactive, you know, 55 to 60.
Yeah.
Whether it be a house that's vacant or if it's a house that had burned down.
And all houses, no commercial
No,
buildings?
there's gonna be commercial.
Okay. I just, for my thing, I guess, if there's a building there, I can see that, but if there's like, they had a fire, like let's go to Air Street, is there, where that lot, where, right downtown, it's became that because they haven't built there over 10 years now. There's a main probably hook up there, so those people, even though there's nothing gonna be put there, would they be charged for infrastructure right there?
If I can just interrupt, please use a microphone
Oh, sorry.
for our listeners.
So I mean, for those cases, you know, there's not even a meter on that property. You know, it's a service line going into dirt. So there, feasibility wise, I don't think that we'd even have a network or, you know, a pipeline to say that we would charge those.
Okay, so it's only if there's still a meter attached to the building.
I would think that would be
Okay, because the way, when you said burnt down, completely gone, there wouldn't be a meter. So that's why I'm verifying on that.
No, I guess I misspoke in that regards to that. And realistically, our end of this in Public Works is just determining, you know, what is the status of this? Why was it marked inactive? And then from there, handing that off to the administrative staff and going, here's the information. What would you like us to do, or how would you like this to treat this? Because, you know, anything that's marked inactive right now, even though we might drive by and pick up a reading, it's not, you know, the system's not looking at it because it says it's inactive.
So it ignores whatever reading it
Correct.
gets.
So basically what we did is we went through all of the properties that weren't getting a bill. They're in our system, they're on our radar, they at one point got a bill, but for whatever reason, they don't anymore. And then we took Christie's data that she had entered in, so she marks it inactive, and then she puts a description as to why. Some of them didn't have descriptions that were real clear, some of them did, it just depended on, you know, when it was done. And then we compiled all that information into a spreadsheet, tabbed at the bottom for each reason. So no meter, vacant property, vacation, whatever. We had several different tabs at the bottom. And then that's been handed off to Rob, and his crew's going to go through that spreadsheet, and each of those locations is going to determine why they were made inactive. So if it's a situation like you're speaking of, they're going to determine that. It's going to come back to administration, and then it'll be decided yes or no whether we initiate that flat fee charge on their account. And a perfect example I can think of is we have several homes that are vacant. They've been vacant for a while, but we don't really know if they're vacant. I I mean, how do we know that, right? They've been marked inactive, so as Rob said, when the guys go out and do the meter reading, it might pick up a read, but it's not gonna load into our system when we come back. There's a little handheld thing that we come back and we
Yeah.
load it up into the system. It's not gonna load into our system because the software is gonna see inactive and gonna kick it back out. So there could be somebody living there using water and they're not getting charged. We don't know, because we haven't looked into it that far. Same with another example would be, with some of the new houses that are being built up here at the north end of town. They haven't closed yet, but they have an address, they've initiated a water bill, and there's no usage there. Well, then they're not getting charged infrastructure and maintenance right now either, because they're still marked inactive. But if you walked into that house and, if the owner or the contractor wanted to go in and clean it, they could turn on the water and clean it.
No,
and use the water, and they're not getting
I
charged.
understand all that, I'm just making sure, and that goes where you mentioned, sorry, Deb.
That's right.
When with that, you said if it's like what I was explaining, then I'll go back to admin and yes or no.
Right.
So like a house that's not there anymore, that shouldn't be a yes then, because you're
Yeah,
not
that's
using it.
something, when we have all that information, Lou and I will sit down and we'll look at it and make a determination on, what's happening at each of those locations and what should be done.
Because I think if somebody has a massive house fire and the house is deemed
Well, if there's no meter,
uninhabitable,
then, right.
even if they have a meter, but if the house is like damaged and nobody can live there until the place is either leveled or insurance rebuilds it, obviously the city would have the discretion at that point to say, hey, you know what, you physically can't have anybody in here, so we're not going to be charging infrastructure until it can be used. So I think that's
Yeah, no, that's why I'm
That's
just
fair.
verifying
Yeah.
with that.
yeah. You don't want to victimize people even more. Like I know your house burned down, but here's your bill.
Deb, I understand your math down here for the 20, but which one of the options are you using for the usage?
For the 13 units?
Correct.
The 13 units,
No, I know that, but
okay.
is this the
This would be the first year at the 6% increase.
first year of
This
what?
is only the first year of your 6% increase. I just did a snapshot of what, if you voted on doing the 6%, the
Okay.
35 and the 20 as of May 1, so from May 1 this year till April 30th, 2025, that's what your bill would look like.
But which infrastructure fee are you using? The flat
Infrastructure is
fees?
35.
35?
Yeah.
Okay, and then, maintenance fee. You have
Maintenance is at 20.
25? Still at 20?
I left maintenance based on the maintenance fee remaining at 20.
She left it at 20.
Yeah.
for-
Just wanted to,
Yeah.
So it's 108 per year if you're using 13 units. That's right?
193?
No,
That's your
but per,
increase.
how much increase?
That
per-
would be your increase,
Yeah,
right,
108.
approximately.
Dollars a month.
That's only within your first year, though.
$9 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
$9 a month.
Everything's going up though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
I like honestly. I like the idea of the step increase option. Obviously the first year it keeps it at 20, so we obviously wouldn't have as much to mess with. But it one of the things that I would be, fine with raising the infrastructure and the maintenance fees, and obviously we have to raise everything. It's just the stomaching of raising everything all at once in one go is, a 1-2 punch. So giving us the option to do a step increase, I think, is a little bit more palatable. So, yes, we all know it's going to go up.
1,
but
2,
it's
3 punch.
not- Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, 1, 2, 3 punch.
Well, but, with the infrastructure going up $10, that's a big
Yeah.
chunk. So if we don't also add another 5 for the maintenance, and can phase that in, that to me seems more palatable
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going with.
So you're saying leave it at 20?
for the first year, yeah.
the
And
20
then,
and
and
20,
then
yeah.
20, 22, 25.
Yeah, you're getting to the 25. It's just you're spacing it out over a couple of years with those increases, so you're not, you're not maxing out all the increases in a single year.
So and then,
Yeah.
I get why we got to do 35, because unfortunately, did all this stuff. It was during COVID, so construction costs went up. So when Dave did it, he was thinking it wasn't going to inflate as much as it did. He was probably just doing regular cost of living inflation. The only one question I do have, because I know it's a lot of big jump, and as for constituents, I do like the step increase. I understand, so we get a little bit more each year. But I know we've done the one before that 5% instead for usage fee. What have you done between how much less money we would have?
We could do 5% and it wouldn't be a huge decrease in our revenue, but we also would have less to work with. So what I did is I compared between 5 and 8, and 6 is the one that we can get stuff done, work on some of the elevated expenses that we're going to have this year and still be okay.
And then I know since I was in your last meeting, but I did watch it, Dan mentioned to come back next year and see what everyone else did, because I know everyone else seems like they're going to be raising rates, and then see what we line in compared to them, so at least with us, we know, and then also see if we actually overjumped it. Say if we actually overjumped it, is there a way we could come back? I know we already approved it. If we're the same city council, come back and say, hey, let's keep it at this instead of increasing again for the following year, or like not increases, like for like the usage fee, instead of going 6% the following year, say, hey, let's do only 5. Are we able to do that?
You would have, I think that discussion was having the option of doing rates yearly instead of 3 years. Did we discuss that?
If that was the case, if we look back and we overjumped and we're way high than other municipalities that.
The answer to your question is, this is all in ordinance form when you approve it, so you can change the ordinance at any time at your discretion.
So you could adopt it for 3 years, and then if you wanted it re-evaluated, we could certainly do that, as staff and have this discussion again next year, and you could change the ordinance again. So yeah, that's always feasible. And I had something else in my head and now I lost it on that realm, but that was the other this ordinance change for this is going to be required, and then if you do choose to go to the by unit billing instead of the base rate, that will require an ordinance change as well. So both of those things we would need some time before May 1 to get that done.
Okay.
Just keep in mind that, first off, the ordinance now set up for 3 years is a good way to plan for each of those years and projects. The other thing too is, and this is where, as elected officials, it's a difficult choice of you don't want to try gouging, so to speak, which we don't try to gouge our citizens, but at the same time we do have a responsibility to make sure that maintenance is done and that safety protocols are done, and unfortunately that does cost. So I just caution the idea of trying to slash as soon as possible, because if we were to eke forward, we would just try to get a little more of our projects done sooner, because as everyone knows, and I'm sure our listeners also know, that prices don't seem to be coming down from one year to another. They just keep going up. So if we slash potential revenues, that cost is still going to go up because we can't control what our vendors do. We'll just have to cut back on projects, which means it's pushing that project further and further back, and that cost is just going to keep escalating. So I just urge against the idea of just trying to slash as soon as possible.
And I wasn't saying that. Yeah, I just said to look, hopefully in a year from now, just to look at it again to see.
I brought that up.
Wait, yeah,
I brought that up.
Yeah, I know you mentioned, but I want to remind it. So
well, because Deb had a spreadsheet of comparing the other municipalities.
And I did, and I looked at that and everything, and I saw we weren't too far off. I saw that when after going through it.
Well, and the thing was, Deb mentioned in the other meeting that a lot of these municipalities have put off projects, and they're looking at raising rates potentially very substantially in the next year or two. So that's why I said, I was like, we don't necessarily have to make any changes annually, but I'd like to review where we're at least once a year and say, okay, where are we at compared to the other municipalities? Because I'd love to see when like Lake in the Hills all of a sudden has to add $200 a month to their water bill, and we're looking great.
Isn't there one that's simpler,
Yeah, I don't know if
the
that one's,
snapshot?
that might be.
Which,
No,
I think that, well,
maybe not.
which is something we
That's
should
tabbed at
do
the bottom
regardless. I mean,
Yeah,
whether,
Go,
and
go
and
back
that's
to
a
we're
that
fair and
good way,
spreadsheet.
because it also helps, and I know that Donovan is
What about-
listening in, as he tries to get more residential
Bottom,
development
there's-
going, or more development
See if
going.
there's a simpler one.
That's
of
something that he
those.
can have handily
Nope.
available to say, okay, here's how we compare to everybody else. So it is a
So go
good,
back
good
one.
philosophy to move with, or move forward with.
one, especially since every municipality clearly bills in
Right.
all completely wonky different ways. There really isn't a standardized way for everybody to do it. So it gives us more of a baseline, because, we do have the flat fees, but we've also done the heaviest amount of infrastructure, increases in our water system, I think, of any of the communities in the county. So,
But as Deb pointed out, she originally looked at 5, 6, 7, and 8%. 5%, we wouldn't be able to do a whole lot. 6% gets us by.
Yeah.
And so if we're just eking by, that's where I just caution against, like, trying to slash as soon as we can, because if we're just eking by, it means we're barely holding up.
Just to be clear, because in our last meeting, you were giving lots of options. And those options are still available to you. But what I asked staffing to do was to bring forward their best recommendation after doing all of the review of what they expect to receive and what they want to try to accomplish. And that is their recommendation. And then, so from that perspective, the 6% was where we landed on, where we could do what we want to accomplish without overextending our residents, but not overextending the city's responsibilities. So that's our best recommendation, but of course, other options are available to you at your discretion. We just wanted to be sure we put our best recommendation forward.
So if I can make a suggestion, not to be kicking the can down the road, because we have to make a decision soon. We do have the budget workshop coming up in February, or at the end of the month. And what I have done for that budget for the wastewater, or for the Fund 70, is I have based it on my recommendations that I made tonight. So I based it on the 6%, the $35 infrastructure, and the $20 maintenance. So we can look at that when we do our evaluation during our workshop, and you will have a better idea, I think, at the end, what revenue we have, what we want to expend from that revenue, and where we're short.
It's the per unit charge?
That would be based on the per unit charge,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that might help, so that you can get a visual of what we need to do in this upcoming year and why we need to do these increases, and it might make your decision a little bit easier to make.
Well, and it goes back to what Charlie was the one that brought all this up as far as like the breakdowns and stuff. And the more we discussed it, it made more sense. So I will say, just for the record, I like the idea of Charlie's suggestion, getting these inactive meters billed for the infrastructure, because that's every person in this town that pays a water bill can see the fairness of that, because we all pay into that, and if somebody's not, we socialize the costs for that infrastructure, so nobody gets hit with a $25,000 bill to put a pipe in going to their house. So that's fair. I also like, since it's so simple, I like the idea of getting rid of the base unit charge, because I don't see it as a necessary, since we've got the other fees.
Yeah, we can find no reason to maintain it.
Yeah, and I agree, the logic is there when we didn't have a system that allowed for the flat fees, that made sense, because you need a baseline
Sure.
for budgeting.
Right.
So I'd like to move that way. And then as far as the maintenance fees, I think the step up way is fair. We're only talking a couple bucks, so it's not like it's gonna, break anybody's bank. The city's not gonna be struggling with that, but I think it makes it a little bit more palatable to sell, because we do have to raise all this stuff. Can't just not pay the loan.
So we can, we'll have a timeline as far as getting the ordinance changed and, getting it adopted before May 1. As far as if you chose to do the by-unit billing, that's literally, I could do that in like a day, probably an hour. Call BSNA, they remote in, and it's done. At the same time, we have one more billing cycle in this fiscal in March.
Correct.
So the next billing cycle after that is in May. And we'll be hiring a new water billing clerk. We're going to be having BSNA on site for training. So we will be able to make sure on that May billing that everything calculated correctly. So it's really, if we're going to make the change, it's a good time to do it.
No, go ahead.
There was one other thing that I brought up too, and it doesn't affect the funds or so on, but right now that we've got the infrastructure fee and the maintenance fee separate, and I'm not sure the public cares. I mean, about which is which. I mean, they're fixed fees. And one of the suggestions I had is why can't we have a fixed fee? And how we handle the money internally is however we want to handle the money.
So instead of saying 20 and 25, you're suggesting make it a total?
Yes.
My only rebuttal to that, we could certainly do that. That's certainly within your discretion, but it provides more transparency by helping people understand where the money goes. Because the infrastructure fee is all about servicing the debt to build, and the maintenance fee is all about tackling new infrastructure.
Well,
Right
taking
now-
care of what we have, right?
Yes.
Right now, in our budget, in our revenue fund 70, the account line item is combined, and it just says maintenance. And actually, it caused a little bit of a mini stroke last year when we were trying to figure out where infrastructure was going.
Oh, no.
And it was through some looking into it that, both maintenance and infrastructure are going into this one revenue line item. And so we actually talked about this coming year, separating it out for that reason, so that we can actually see how much we're getting in infrastructure, how much we're getting in maintenance, and be able to, for an accounting standpoint, have some clarification on that, considering those revenue sources fund two different things
Right,
within the expense account.
yeah.
So if we were to combine those into one thing like they are now, it's just less,
Well, it's less transparent.
it's not less transparent in that the people are paying $55 and you're right, they don't care, it's $55 and, it's a combined thing. Or not that they don't care, but that they're not going to scrutinize that.
Care about the amount.
But right, of course they do. But on our end, it's just easier for us to have a visual on, how it's being worked through the system. Does that make sense?
I would caution against lumping them on the billing.
Yeah.
From a sales standpoint. Because,
Any way we want
well,
to. And it
I'm
doesn't have
talking.
It doesn't have to be on the bill.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is when we bill it, we itemize it out. We say infrastructure, maintenance, et cetera. I would highly advise not lumping those all together because it's a mental thing. Because if someone's looking at their bill and we say, okay, infrastructure went from 25 to 35, and it says like, okay, this pays for the water treatment plant, the maintenance, et cetera, this pays for infrastructure, whatever. When you lump it all together, they don't see 25 and 35. They just see a big number that's scary and expensive, and now they're mad.
I'm not married to it, Dan.
I know.
It's not
No, I know. I'm just saying that,
It's just,
that
I
from a
just
sale,
thought it might be a good idea to make it simpler and so
it
on.
looked, it's just, it's like the whole
I get
99
it.
to 0.
Okay.
It looks like it's more than it is, and it's scary, and then people are going to be really upset.
Yeah, because 35 and 20, 25, those aren't scary numbers, but 55, 60.
Big numbers scare people.
So
Just in general.
along those same lines,
Yes.
so along those same lines, what we're trying to do too, and Rob's probably going to give me the evil eye here, is the goal is sometime over the next 3 years, or before, hopefully, in year 4 at this point, to move from every other month billing to every month, and so that the people don't see a large bill every other month, and those who are on fixed income will have smaller bills every month. So this is something. So case in point with the example here at the very bottom, just very quickly, instead of seeing a bill of $193.73 every other month, you would see a $96.86 every month.
Well, and I actually, there's a second reason why I agree with that, because one of the things is homeowners, we don't necessarily always know that our water meter is going, and you can have a leak,
Right.
And that leak can go for 2 months, and now all of a sudden you've got a $700 or $800 bill and you have no idea, or more. I think monthly billing, at least, I agree. When we can get to that point, I would prefer that
I
because,
found my leak the other day in my bathroom. I had to fix the cartridge.
well, yeah, I mean, a seeping
and see-
toilet tank can cost
Correct.
you a couple $100 over a couple months, and
And I
if
just
it's in
thought
a
of
room
this
you don't
meet-
use,
this nice meeting when I saw that, I'm like, nope, I gotta fix that right now.
so
That's
you don't
something
know.
that also, once we get up and running with the new clerk and the new system that Rob's working on, we could revisit that at any time too, because that's an ordinance change. So we could look at that maybe a year from now when we're looking at Matt's request and,
And that's
Well,
what,
it's
Work on
actually
that at that
Dan's
time.
request. I'm just verifying because I agreed with Dan when I heard that.
It's my fault. if
your
anything
5% request.
so the reason I threw that out there is again, just before we start like focusing, hey, we get through this year and then next year, let's start cutting back on projects. Well, we still have all the other maintenance we have and equipment and so on to take care of, but if we can at least also add this type project, we can make it easier on
Yeah.
everybody sooner.
No, I
So is everyone
agree.
comfortable just waiting till after the budget workshop and?
If we have,
Rather just vote on it tonight. I mean, do we have consensus with what's proposed?
Well, you would be voting to recommend to the full city council
Yeah.
to enact an ordinance, right? So
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the way I look at it is I'm comfortable with everything. I would prefer the step increase versus because I know we can't remain.
So is that a
Yeah.
motion?
You want?
Yeah, make
Yeah,
a
okay. All right, well, then I'll make a motion to go with going with the 35.
Yep.
The step up and the 6, 6, and 6, unit increases for,
And switching over to the unit.
and switching over
Yeah,
to the
from
unit
the-
and adding on the properties that are getting rid of that, I guess getting rid of the inactive.
So Deb, do you have all that?
I have it, yes. As far as adding the active properties, that wouldn't have to be an ordinance change because there's nothing in the ordinance. That was an in-house decision to make them inactive.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's should be part of the motion or,
No, it doesn't
Okay.
have to be part of the motion.
okay.
What I will say, well, let me just
So you can amend your motion.
I'll
to
amend
remove
my
that.
motion to remove that part, but I will say that when we do draft that ordinance, my suggestion would be to have the verbiage in there that at the city's discretion for application, because obviously we shouldn't have like a review or tribunal on it, but it would just be if it makes sense to allow it or not.
Well, that would be actually at the administration level.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
Right.
just want to make sure that the
That-
verbiage in the
You don't need
ordinance
it in
wouldn't
the
need to
ordinance
be in the
because
ordinance.
we have, no, because we have to report that anyway.
Okay,
There'll be something in the minutes.
okay. Yeah, as
Just-
long as
It
it's
would
in
start to complicate it because what did you mean here? And
Okay.
it's better just to keep two separate things apart.
No, that makes sense. Just when we get to that point was what I'm getting at. Okay.
And I'd second that.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna vote aye, but I'm also gonna
Caveat.
reserve to run these through a lot of different scenarios on a spreadsheet and build some graphs.
Okay.
So in other words, I might change my mind at the city council.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
discretion.
I would say if you come up with anything really good,
yeah,
please bring it so that we can look at
well, I
it.
will.
mean, yeah,
You can count on it.
Yeah.
But
we can always review this again, but
If you need
but
some other,
but the concept is right, and you know, and I'm sure that, but we only have one example, here in the bottom, and I just want
Yeah.
to run some more and
Yeah.
check it out, but,
Good, thank you.
but otherwise.
Carly, if you need more information, let me know, because there's quite a bit of,
I will.
different scenarios have a whole bunch, I got a whole book right here, so I can
I
help you out.
appreciate you, Charlie, bringing this up. I mean, I know we've
Yeah.
gotten the weeds on this, but I really like that you brought this up and the way you approached it because it really allowed us to approach this in a more fair way. So
Well,
that,
Yeah, and I just have to say, after watching the meeting, I'm so glad I didn't like tough it out to come. I was so sick. I couldn't have, I wouldn't have made it. I mean, that was pretty intense. It was like, whoa. Okay, we're in. Everybody vote?
Was that a unanimous yes?
Yes, it
There were
was.
no no's, right?
Yes, no no's. Okay, item number 4 is the water tower program.
So this is something that you'll also see at the budget workshop, but the reason we're discussing it tonight is to basically have a better handle on it when we meet for the workshop, so we can make the final decision on that. So all the information is, already preloaded. So that is, yep, that one. Okay, so Jim, you might have to help me here. Do you want to come sit over here? You want to explain what initiated the initial request for the quotes?
We started out last year budgeting to paint Tower 3 up on Harvard Hills Road. My contractor was not able to do the work due to a heart attack. And the type of work that this is being done, there has to be a certain qualified paint inspector on site. He's the guy. So they weren't able to do it. And they felt at this time that he's probably not going to get back to doing that kind of work. So they scaled back their whole business. So I reached out to him and asked for recommendations. His recommendations was from the Viking company that we talked to. I went through our Illinois Rural Water that we belong to and contacted them, got some names. We contacted 3 different other contractors, talked to them. What we ended up getting was 2 guys that had a really nice program where they could come in and actually just paint that water tower on the inside and out. Or they could put these programs together where we could paint that water tower and pay for it over an amount of years. And while they were here, we took advantage of them to look at all of our water towers. What we found, there was some deficiencies that weren't being seen. Some things that need to be addressed, some things that can be addressed in the future, but should be looked at. So with their programs, we had them both come in, present their program. We took a look at it. To paint the water tower on Harvard Hills, it outside didn't get done, so it still needs to be done. But we found the inside to be in a little worse shape than the outside that needs to be addressed. That was on my radar for this coming fiscal anyhow. So now we're at this point where that tower didn't get touched, and we're $700,000 to get that tower where it should be. Or we could look at this program, through this program over a 10-year program with the, they'll actually paint inside and out of all 3 of our water towers. But by doing so, we're going to be paying these guys in that $300,000 to $400,000 range every year for about 6 years. And after that 6 years, that money will start coming down. But what we get out of that is all of our water towers painted. The years that they're not painting the other towers, they'll still come in every year. They'll inspect our water towers. And even over that 10-year program, they'll still come back and inspect any deficiencies to the towers. They're going to take care of. That's covered under their warranty type work. Any deficiency that would be like an act of God type thing would be above and beyond. There's some components on the inside of a tower that are operational that can go bad.
So, thank you. So basically, what we did from a numbers standpoint, and if you go back to that first page, Mayor, the Viking quote to do just the tower that Jim originally called them for is $450 for the exterior, $258 for the interior. And then doing his due diligence, he had McGuire come out, which is the second page, and they were completely the opposite. Exterior was less, interior was more, but it still came out to the same price. So we're looking at around $700,000 this upcoming fiscal year, just to do the inside and outside of one tower. So, and that's what's kind of sparked this whole program discussion. So, can you go to page 3? Oh, that's just a side-by-side comparison. We don't need that. Okay, so page 4, go up a little bit, Mayor.
This one?
Nope, page 4, there you go. So this, just so there's so that, this committee knows, I think originally it was brought to committee, this discussion was brought to committee and, the request for an RFP was made, or request for qualifications was made. And in talking about that further, with staff, it was determined that that would kind of be a waste of our money to go out and do an RFQ because, as Jim said, from his, rural water, the rural water group, these would be the people that we would probably get if we did an RFP anyway. So Viking responded to us and gave us an estimate. McGuire Iron responded to us, gave us an estimate. Putnam County said, well, we'll do a drive-by and look at it, and Jim never heard from him again. Water Tower Clean and Coat is the company we currently use, but again, he's ill and they don't have an asset management program. And then Leary Construction was contacted twice by phone, emailed once, and we never received a call back, so clearly they're not interested. So I think the due diligence was done in reaching out to the companies that would provide us with a competitive rate. So can we go to the next slide? So we've met with both companies, twice with Viking, once with McGuire, and it's been determined in-house that McGuire's probably going to be the better route for us. They've been in business since 1915. Viking's been in business for about 5 years.
I think
Correct?
they were more like 15 or 5 years. But the other guy was 15 years doing what he's doing, but he did it with,
With a different company.
well, he did it with McGuire Iron.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
right, so
okay.
he branched off on his own. So he does have the experience, but they just don't have the tenure in the actual asset management program. And McGuire's been doing this program for quite a bit longer. Basically their presentation and the work that they came out and did as far as the evaluation on all of our towers and the time they spent and the feedback that we got, and we actually have some documentation, nice notebooks of documentation that they provided that if anyone would like to look at, you can feel free to stop by and take a look at. But we were very impressed with them. And the next page is actually a summary I've provided. This is a kind of a snapshot from the books that they provided. And it gives a description of each tower. And I marked those on the bottom of each page. And I think you have hard copies of this as well.
Yeah.
So you can read what they found and what repairs they recommend. And I think they were very fair in letting us know we would recommend this, but it's not urgent, it's not, or this might be a problem in the future, it's not necessary right now. It wasn't like they just hit us with everything and, oh, we got to fix this, and this. So that, I think we were very confident that we were getting, a solid report from them.
Right. One other thing I wanted to add too is that during those discussions, we did approach them, and I think I mentioned this last time, that if we went, whichever one, be it Viking or McGuire, that this committee decides to or may decide on, sorry, it's been a long day. Both of them have pre-written in their contract that should we have to delay a payment a year due to financial troubles, that we can with no penalty. And likewise, if we need to, like, we're just satisfied or unsatisfied, we can end the contract with a notice.
So Mayor, if you go to the last page, this kind of explains that a little bit more. Oh, it's sideways, sorry. Everybody has that page though, right? Yeah. So this is a snapshot example that they did of our, actual, this would be something that they would actually do for us, and we would have the option of moving some things around based on Jim's recommendations, or, like one of the things we discussed is in year one, do we want to take and paint all the 3 towers at once? Do we want to do that all in one year?
Two of them they wanted to take down that first year.
Yeah, so,
A little worried about taking 2 towers down in 1 year
Right.
on my side, but.
So they could move that around, maybe do one the first year and then maybe one the second year, one the third. They would, this would be at our discretion, they would make this report what we, or this, program what we wanted it to be. And that's kind of irrelevant tonight, because what we want to look at more is the cost per year. And so if you look at and so this is a 10-year program, and it's an automatic renewed contract year to year. but it can be canceled at any time on a verbal request. The only stipulation to that is if we were to cancel it on year 3, and they've got more work into the project than we have paid, we would owe them the difference, which is fair.
Yes.
So, and the concern I had with going with the 10-year program is that we would be locked in, we won't be locked in. So, and I think, I didn't, read in there that that we could skip payments, but I don't know if that's something that you discussed
That was
verbally.
discussed, and I know, Viking, or McGuire should have been sending over a version, or you should have received a version that has that verbiage in it, but
So
both
we
were
would,
discussed.
we would obviously have a contract and we would
Right.
scrutinize that before we pulled the trigger and sign that anyway, so.
So, is this based on that same kind of front-load loan?
Yes, yes, but this is
How can you
actual.
just cancel at any time?
You can cancel at any time, but if you're in arrears, you have to pay the difference. So if we did it for 2 years and they did 600,000 worth of work, but we only paid them 400,000, we would owe them 2. And then we're out of the program, we're not committed to it anymore. If we canceled in 3 years and they had done 300,000, we paid them 350, they owe us 50 back. It's a year-to-year contract. It's a 10-year program, but it's a year-to-year contract.
I mean, from a business standpoint, as a maintenance company, it's a really smart program. It basically guarantees you work for 10 years.
Right.
As much as you
Right.
can guarantee.
So the whole concept of this and the reason why we're bringing this to you is because these towers are going to have this work done. Within the next 10 years, this is going to have to be done.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, but
So what I want to point out though is, so if you look at year 1 and you look at the combined total, which is 4 columns up from the bottom, $388,403. This year, we're going to have to spend $700,000 to fix Tower 1, or I'm sorry, 3.
Well, even if we just opted not to paint the outside and paint the inside, which needs to be done, you're gonna spend $400,000. So you're gonna spend that money this year no matter what. But this way, you're gonna get that tower, done on the inside and outside this year for that. So they're gonna do this work on that tower and be into it for money on their
Right.
side.
right.
And we just pay them the following year.
And then the price goes down, it remains stable
6 years.
next year, and then slowly goes down.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the end of the 10-year cycle, you don't have to budget as much, and you also have fully refurbished towers. You know, they may need some work here and there, you know, as normal wear and tear, but your complete rehabilitation of your towers is complete, and you've paid for it all.
But now they're showing all 3 towers.
All 3
This
towers would be
year.
in the program. No, so this is
The
just
way
an
it
example.
Oh, okay.
The actual work itself, Lisa, at the top is just an example. It's the prices are accurate.
Okay.
And so
We can
like,
move that around.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like
Gotcha.
if
Okay.
Jim were to call Darren and say, hey, I really only want to do 2 paintings this year, he would move maybe Tower 2 to next year and just do visuals on the other 2 and then painting on
Okay.
the,
1988.
that's the year.
And I get that, but for what? Is that when that one was put up, Front Street?
Vision.
Okay, and that's the only time it hasn't been done anything since it was put up, besides painted 1 year? Because it got painted, I know once. Yes,
Coated
because that's when we got the
correct.
big new Home of Milk Days. I was a kid when that got done.
Downtown tower, that
Yes.
that has been,
Well, that's front, it says
not-
Front Street.
Not blasted.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
Yeah, it was not, I wasn't superintendent back then, Keith
Yeah.
was, but, that tower was not blasted down to bare metal at that time, but it was overcoated
and
with that
then,
new logo.
Jim, how much money did we use that we earmarked well, I guess currently budget year, that we earmarked to do the painting that we used for that well, that we had it,
So,
all of it, okay, just want to make sure. I can remember if we, okay.
Yeah, it was like.
I can't remember how much we did with it.
It turned out that it was a miracle that we'd put that money aside.
Yes.
Because Deb was like, it would have been real bad if we hadn't.
And Jim, refresh my memory, how much was it gonna be to do the painting only, last year that we put into this year's budget? Do you remember?
I don't remember
We
off the top of
put-
my head.
are you talking about this coming
No,
budget?
for
Current
the
fiscal.
23-24
The
budget.
budget we're in now?
that-
I think
yeah.
it was 200 something, wasn't it?
250, I
250.
believe, yeah.
So that was roughly 250,000,
Yeah.
assuming we didn't have any, but that would have just been painting and one tower.
Correct. Yeah, just.
So
the
for
one,
essentially 133,000, or 138,000 more than that, you'd get a lot more going.
Well, the
Lot
thing,
more taken care
also, they're not just gonna paint. On the inside of these towers, they're gonna take them down to bare metal. And then all new primer, new paint. So the inside of these towers will last, 30 years, if not more. Because all they really do is just get iron bacteria that kind of, stains them, basically. The outside is what takes the sun beating,
I mean, we'll effectively have almost 3 brand-new water towers within the first
You'll
few
definitely
years.
extend the life of them.
Well, I mean,
by
it'll
proper
be
maintenance.
about as close to new as you can get.
Right.
But, I mean, for the cost. I mean,
Refurbish.
Yeah, refurbish.
be able to pay for it in 10 years. Think about this, if I come to you every year within the next 10 years and ask for that $700,000 to paint those towers, where do you think we're gonna be in 10 years? You think all those towers will be painted?
No.
I do not.
No.
Yeah. It just can't be
It
done.
essentially allows us to cash flow the cost over
Right.
a period of time.
The thing that I
That's
like the
great.
most about doing a program like this is that, it's very difficult for us to all come up with like $700,000 in a year after, 2-3 years, et cetera, something comes up. But by us committing to something like this would extend beyond any of us on city council, potentially past people in the staff, because we've committed to it, it's gonna live on, and that commitment's there. So
Yep.
when we do 1 year, city council changes over, the next group comes in and they say, well, we're not gonna bother. This, at least, while they could jump out of this commitment, this kind of puts it in place, so it's handled for
Right.
the next 10 years. We don't have
It's-
to, don't have to revisit it every year.
As the mayor pointed out, it's better budgeting.
Yeah.
It's better maintenance. We get the inspections done, we get the flush outs done. And again, a brand new tower alone, without digging the wells, probably $1.5 million, $2 million.
Probably right in there, yeah.
Yeah. So the longer we can extend the life of this asset, you've got 3 very expensive pieces of equipment there.
Well, it helps us reevaluate our water costs
um,
and billing too.
Do we have do they have a list of cities that they've done?
References? Yes, they do have references. These are just pages I copied out of the book, but the book's probably, it's a good sized book with information in it, and there's one for each tower, so if you want to stop by and look at them, Charlie, come on in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then, who are they partnering with for financing?
They do it themselves.
They do it themselves. They've been in business forever.
How big are they?
They're big.
McGuire Iron, they don't just paint, they build water towers. So, that's the kind of company they are. They actually build water towers. They paint water towers. They're in the water tower business.
Gotta trust Dare.
So.
What's
They're a big,
They're a family-owned business.
multi-million-dollar business.
what is the interest rate? Do you know that?
I
For
don't-
they don't charge us an
there's
interest
no
rate.
interest. No. This is it, no interest.
What
on
we
this.
see at the bottom, combined total column, is what we need to budget for every year.
Okay.
So another note I want to make is at the end of 3 years, if we were to pursue this program, we're going to need, 388 this year, 388 next year, 258 the third year. So that kind of goes with the desire to reevaluate the water billing structure. And, possibly either look at other projects or, maybe we can forego some percentage increases or a lower percentage increase into that next cycle too. So again, as the mayor said, overall, it makes sense to just look out into the future and know we're going to be able to accomplish this goal and what it's going to cost us to do it.
Programs like these are not uncommon. It's, every community I've done is done a program like this.
I don't see a downside to it.
Sense.
Well,
that's the thing,
and if
I
you
don't
sign a
see-
contract, you fix all of this work at today's dollars.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a
It's hard to
downside
see
to this.
anything on a negative side of it, to be honest with you.
Right.
For them, it's just a win-win
So
because they
money
make
goes
sure that
below.
their men are working. It just keeps
Yeah.
them guys busy.
Right.
So
And
this is the time of year.
That's
like
why they've
when
been around since,
So do we just need a motion to bring this to the city council?
For what?
Thank you.
To what?
Thanks, I
Go
appreciate that.
enter into a contract
Correct.
With McGuire.
with McGuire? Okay.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion,
Yeah, I'll make
Matt?
that motion.
I'll
Charlie?
second it then.
Okay.
The other side of the room gets the,
Okay.
the motions.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, that was the hard part. It's Rob's turn now. Do you got a clip here?
All right. All right, so for my end of this is talking about the lead service line identification and replacement program. In 2022, the IEPA and the federal government basically both came to terms, and they made a public act signed into law that requires us to develop an inventory of lead service lines within the community that we have, and to start making a plan to replace them. The city of Harvard has met this guideline for the past few years, turning in our best estimate on where the lead service lines are, how many we have, and then replacing them and tracking them. However, another component of that is the replacement plan itself, as well as just doing a more detailed job of getting the lead lines figured out where they're at and how many we have. So right now, as it sits, we have a decent idea. I think our number's a little high, but we don't know what we don't know without getting into everybody's house. There's consultant firms that are out there, Christopher Burke being one of them, that have done lead service line inventory programs to help develop a GIS-based thing, online portal, so that people can self-report. So that gives us some information, which limits the time we'd have to go door to door. Also, with this hard information, we can start applying for grant funding for the replacement program and develop a replacement program. In the last item, there's a lot of numbers being thrown around. I've got some numbers, and one of them is not very pretty. So right now, if we have actually 1,200 or 1,300 lead service lines, we're reporting 1,299. Starting next year, we have 15 years to replace 7% of those lead service lines a year. So we will be replacing about 86 lead service lines a year. Woodstock just did this math. That's about 8,000 per service line. So that means the city would have to budget $692,800 a year to replace 7% of the service lines each year for 15 years.
That really fast.
Yes. just gonna jump right over that, right over the gorge. So, that being said, it is paramount to, number one, hone in on how many lead service lines we actually have, so we have a good number that we can make this program off of. And number two, if we have a good number, we have data that we can back it up with, we can start applying for grants and get some of this forgiven. Right now, the city has an obligation to where if we run into a lead service line, this has happened 3 times in the past month and a half, 2 months. If we find a lead service line, we have 30 days to replace it. And we have a 120-day extension possible. But, right now, I'd rather just get them out of the system. So we've replaced 3 recently. Because we are using our own funding, we only have to do our portion, so from the B box to the main. Fortunately, we had 2 that the residents had replaced their end recently, and that's how we discovered it. We had one where we replaced our end, and they chose not to replace their end of the lead service line, so then we have to give them a piece of paper that says, you have a lead service line. If you're a business or a multifamily use property, or you have a tenant, you have to put, lead filters on any faucet that's used for consumption, food preparation, making baby formula, all that. So, that being said, we reached out to a couple of different engineering firms, Christopher Burke being one of them. There is funding in the tank. Previously, the IEPA has done 3 rounds of funding for development of a lead service line inventory and replacement program. I think they spent about $3 million of the $10 million that they had, so they're going to do another round of funding. I've been told that is on the edge. It's gone through committees, and it's just waiting to be released again. So we'll be able to jump in on the 4th round of funding. However, they require, as part of this grant, to have a prepared service agreement with a third-party firm to assist us with this. So the reason I'm bringing this before administration committee tonight is to get this, get the ducks in a row, so that way, when this funding becomes available, we can run with it. We can get the approval that we needed. We can get everybody's signature on it, and we can start running. This was, the replacement plan and the inventory was originally due April 15th of this year. I did put in for an extension, and we have until September 1st to come up with all this stuff now. It's going to be a very tight timeline and budget. Right now, for communities our size with as many service connections as we have, we can get about $40,000 in funding. According to Christopher B. Burke, their proposal costs about $32,636 to do this work. So that would be covered under the cost of, or under the proposed grant funding. So this is something that I believe would be a really good opportunity for us and would get us ahead of the game. Because right now, I think even most municipalities and the couple of firms I've talked to, with the inspections and the self-reporting, they're seeing about a 50 to 60% return on having people self-reported as, something, they get up with their water bill, they scan the QR code, and it'll walk them through self-identifying the service line. So that means, of the 1,300 lead service lines, we would end up having to still inspect a fair number of them ourselves, which would require us to get access to the house. And if we can't get access to the house, then we're assuming it's lead. So this just gets us closer and provides us with tools and opportunity that we do not have in-house.
Can you identify the lead service line by noting where the meter is installed?
You can. So some of the struggle that we had with this is, even recently, we had a business owner reach out to us about a low water pressure. We went there, you're looking at the service line, and we're checking the valves and stuff. The inside of the building where it connected to the meter, to the pigtail, that was copper. And all right, well, obviously there's some sort of a flow issue, so we're going to go dig down to the B box and see what we got. It's lead. So somewhere in between the B box and the meter, underground, under the slab, at some point there was a repair made that took it from lead to copper. So this is, right now, the IEPA is not mandating that we actually, pothole both sides of the B box. However, knowing what's in the house, if you have lead on your meter, obviously you're going to have a lead service line or a portion of it that needs to be replaced, and that will trigger more things to come. It'll provide us with a timeline, things like that. So, but right now, if it's undisturbed, we don't have a duty to act. But if there's a main break nearby, if we dig down to see what's going on with your B box, we have anytime there's an excavation where we uncover it, we have a duty to act within 30 days. So this is just funding to get ahead of
Just
that.
out of curiosity, is it properties developed after a certain date that are much more much
Yes.
less likely? I mean,
So-
what's our date rate? I know,
we're talking
lead paint. Is there a date range?
I think the last time, when did it fall out? 80 was
Somewhere in the 70s to 80.
yeah, it was because there was they stopped allowing it, but then you still had people burning up stock of it.
Okay.
So I think generally things made after 80 are assumed that it shouldn't be, that'll be copper
Yeah.
or galvanized. But then again, galvanized too, if there's galvanized that's downstream from lead, that qualifies for replacement because the galvanized can leach in the lead
Yeah.
and then release it back in.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
curious because, we
So-
start doing a program, we should
Well,
probably know.
R3 is kind of if you're in zone R3,
Yeah,
that's kind
I
of
mean the older part of town.
Yeah, that's where I'm
The
saying.
smaller lots.
We obviously know where to focus.
Yeah.
Some areas.
Yeah.
So can
Yeah.
the
Our house.
homeowner, assuming homeowner doesn't know anything about plumbing,
Yes.
and we're asking them to try and self-identify,
So there's.
how do we educate the homeowner to determine what type of piping they have in their
Yeah.
basement?
It's just metal.
Part of the what Christopher Burke and a lot of the other third-party firms do is, as part of that QR code, it walks you through a self-inspection. Does it scratch easily? Is it soft? Is it magnetic? Does it look like copper? And then there's even a portion of it where you can take an image and the image would report back just in case, so we can verify it and we can go, hey, you know what, this might be something that we want to take a look at. When can we get into your property and sort of confirm, deny? So it's very intuitive. You can, there's a bunch of them out there, and the wheel doesn't have to be reinvented in this point. Christopher Burke's had the success with this in other communities. So essentially they're taking what's a proven plan, they're gonna copy it and paste it in Harvard. And, they're gonna do it in multiple languages and, roll it out like that. But in order to be properly positioned to move forward with this, we just need to make sure that, all the ducks are in a row, and having this pre-approved to move forward with is a big step.
So you need a motion to approve to work
Correct.
with Burke. I mean, anytime we have grants for infrastructure improvement, we need to jump on that right away, because we all know that grant money is fickle. That purse gets opened and closed on a, whim. And right now we
Is that a
look,
motion?
well, I'm just saying that we, just to kind of push it through the messaging that,
Can you remind
Right.
me if this is upfront funding for the city reimbursable grant?
So once we apply for it, they will award us 50% at the signing of the contract and 50% on completion.
And you're planning on pulling the trigger on this prior to May 1 if you get approval tonight?
Correct.
Okay.
If we can get it through before May 1, if they release the grant funding, obviously, so that brings up the other portion of it. I believe through discussion that we do have funding just in case it doesn't come out. But this is something that, talking to the IEPA, if we move on this beforehand, we don't get the money.
So what I'd like to do with this, instead of doing a budget amendment at this point, because we're so late in the fiscal year, is we have a sewer water tap-on fund, which is our money market account, and when we have new construction, the tap-on fees, permit fees go into this account. Right now, it's healthy, and I would recommend getting approval to spend the, whatever, the half, I can't read that,
Thousand something.
from
yeah.
this fund, and then when we receive the grant reimbursement, we'll put it back into the fund, instead of doing a budget amendment and spending it out of the cash account.
16,318.
that makes
Okay,
sense.
that sounds good.
Less logistics involved.
Do you want to add that into your motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and amend my motion to make the changes Deb described. I'll leave it at that.
I like Lori just nodding.
Recommend approval.
Okay.
And to recommend approval to enter into the contract with Burke.
So is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thank
So
you.
quick question, so I understand this. So you can't use the money until we know we get the grant, correct? Because if you start using the money,
The part of the executed, part of the,
quick, hold on, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Rob. How quickly to, when you apply for this grant, will you hear an answer?
that, I mean, it moves at the speed of government. But
Okay.
if this is something where, we are, by doing this, we will be so much farther ahead of a lot of other communities.
I
that-
understand, I'm hoping we get the grant, but say, because it's not a guarantee that we'll
Yeah.
get the grant. So say we don't hear back until July, and then that's when we finally, say, okay, we can start using this money. Or is this firm gonna be behind in making that September 1st deadline?
I mean, absolutely. The
Are
sooner
you
this
able to make
happens, the
another
better.
extension after that with the
We're
government?
allowed 1 6-month extension for the inventory and 1 6-month extension for the replacement plan.
So we already used the inventory one. And then replacement plan, I know with all this, once that's done, and you guys might know, Lou, is the feds or state have grants out there for us to fix these lead things, or they expect every community to use their own money?
So,
So
Yeah,
one of
they
the
have-
things that Christopher Burke, we're hiring them to do, this guy, John, specializes in just this. He's, he knows it like the back of his hand. He knows exactly what the grants need to look like, what requirements need to be met, boom, boom, boom. And more than likely, the grants we'll receive the grant funding in time, which is part of the reason why we're spending this money up front. We would be capable of doing it ourselves. However,
No, I know.
we're not
I
capable of doing it
understand that.
ourselves.
to answer your question, what it is that, when they originally started down this project, and this mandate, they had an idea how much this was gonna cost, and it's ballooning rapidly. So at the last discussion, I believe it was either McCog or the mayor's meeting, There was a push at the state level to get additional funding from the federal government to essentially get more money into the program, so more cities, because we're not the only ones initially, I think Rockford was one of them that was early on trying to replace this, and they were trying to kind of go halfsies, more or less, with the homeowner, and found it was a logistical nightmare. And so the only other way to get this done on time was to just absorb the entire cost, and they're seeing that cost just balloon. So yes, so all these, we're not the only one. A lot of communities are already screaming down to IEPA and anybody down in Springfield that well, whether they want to listen or not, we're still screaming down to them. So they're in turn trying to go to the feds to get additional grant dollars, because right now they only have so much. And initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they went for that second round of funding, they didn't have a whole lot of applicants.
No,
Yeah, correct me on that.
Are you talking about for the inventories?
Yeah, they ended up having funds that they could shift over into this next round of funding.
They've had, so there's been a lot of communities that haven't been able to adopt this, so that's why just for the lead service line inventory and replacement, they had 10 million set aside, and they've only expended 3, which is why they're doing another round. And then anything that they're not going to use, obviously they're just going to keep rolling it over. But we are not the worst. City of Chicago has estimated 406,000.
They'll get their money.
Yeah, to do their program, it's going to cost them $12 billion to replace the lead service lines per the mandate.
The long and the short of it is, we can't guarantee, but there is a lot of pressure at the Fed level to get more funding to help not just us, but everybody.
They're terrified of another Flint, Michigan happening.
Yeah,
very much. And actually, Flint, Michigan is what kind of started this whole thing.
Yeah, because I mean, that was a separate, there was a number of reasons why that happened. It wasn't the lead lines that were the cause of it, but.
No, I get that,
all
Dan. I
these
was just
small
making sure the
communities,
feds and everything,
We got
money, so
we gotta get in
we can do the vote.
quick.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I root for Ohio State when Ohio plays Michigan.
and I will add that due to the work that Grant and his staff do with maintaining our, the water system and the additives and everything that we do, we have a very, very safe community. And, when he has to do his samplings, everything's coming back great. So, we don't impose a risk, but under this mandate, we have to take steps forward to do this.
We'll have to make sure that when this starts rolling out, that we're very upfront and very clear and very thoughtful on our communication, so that we don't cause people to panic and start freaking out.
And the other thing about this too is so right now, us as a city using our funding, if we run into one of these lead lines, we're replacing it to the B box and that's it. If we apply for and are awarded federal funding, it is mandated that we replace the customer side either to the water meter or 18 inches within the foundation. So if we get the federal funding, that takes care of both sides, and everybody's in better shape.
Yeah.
But with federal funding, we have a higher probability of getting forgiveness.
Yes.
It's a win-win.
Right. And just for something you had mentioned, I just want to mention it take it one step further for our listeners out there. This mandate, the state is being very strict on it, because if they don't, more cities will just push it off. That's why you're limited to 2 extensions, 1 for each category, and that's it. They want this done, and I believe it has to be done by 29.
I believe so. Communities with like 1,300 or less, you have 15 years. So like, if you have a manageable amount of service lines.
Well, for us,
it would be 15 years so it would be 2030.
Since we conveniently
So
have
2030.
$12.99.
Yeah, we're working on it. We got 3 less now.
$12.96. Okay.
But I mean, even that, last week we had, boil orders and main shutdowns because we had to, take the corpse out and replace the service lines. So.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
So did we vote?
Yeah, we have a
And
motion.
motion second.
We just
So-
gotta vote.
Yeah,
Okay,
discussion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Charlie, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed, no. Okay. I wasn't saying no. I just meant none opposed. Okay. Thank you. Milky Way Park Pit / Pump? Is that you again, Rob? For Deb, okay.
This is a project that we've talked about. We're down to paying for it. as
This
well.
is actually, I believe we discussed this in the past too. This is a issue with the bathrooms out at Milky Way Park that aren't able to hold the capacity of the activity that is out there. And over the summer, we looked into that.
We had some flooding over the summer.
Yes. And Hartwig's came out and did a nice proposal for us. And we had another proposal done that was 50.
We tried to look at a couple other people, and although the initial price was down, they had cut a lot of this off. So when you add in like the excavation and the electrical, it ended up being higher. In addition, we did go back to Hartwig and ask them, is this the best price you can do? And they did lower their price.
So we'd like to get this done because, as we'll discuss at a later date, we're going to be moving forward with the soccer tournament this summer, plus the soccer activity, as you know, has been quite active with the men's league. And just with the summer coming and whatever other activities we choose to do out there for the Parks and Recs Department, we're going to need this facility to function properly. So we discussed this briefly over the last month or so. There's funding available through ARPA that we haven't committed yet, that we need to commit by the end of this year. And we'll discuss more of that at another time. But as far as this cost, we are able to combine, or we have enough in ARPA to cover this cost as well as do a few other things. So I would recommend that if you choose to move forward with this so we can get it done in the spring, we don't use it out of the park budget, that we use ARPA funds for that.
That'll make the parks happy.
This is an eligible expense under ARPA, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing, any major thing that we say we want to use ARPA for?
There are a few other things that we need to discuss as far as ARPA. We'll do that at a different meeting. We don't need to even do that during the budget workshop because that's not budget-driven. But there is a significant amount left that we can get some other projects done as well. The reason why I suggested we do this with some of the ARPA funds is because the Parks Fund, as you know, is, strapped right now, and there's some other things we want to do that are specifically recreation related. And since this is infrastructure, even though it's in the park, technically it's the infrastructure through the water system, then we can definitely justify doing that through the NEU.
This isn't a fun project, so people won't be excited.
Another quick thing is, I know you guys mentioned there was other quotes, just for maybe next time, be able to send it to us as well so we can see the difference as well. And just so we can see the more quotes than just the one of what we
Yeah,
quoted
we can
out.
do that. We can do
This
that
was-
in the
Or at
future.
least a summary.
Yeah,
For the record, though,
It
this
will
was
probably
the
be a
lowest.
summary,
Yeah.
but yes,
This
we
was
could
the
do that.
lowest, though.
What's that?
This was the lowest.
That is the
vote?
lowest.
Okay.
and they start honoring, even though it's September 11th, and the other thing's at 30 days.
They'll still honor.
Yeah, they'll still honor it.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to,
I'll make that motion.
thank you, second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Great.
Yay. Oh, surplus property.
So as you know, in the past, what we've always done is we had like roughly twice a year that we would try to get rid of surplus equipment, but in the last year, we've moved that to let's get rid of it rather than it sit around. You'll see a list here of items that we're asking to be declared surplus, so we can either try to sell it off, or if it is completely useless, to get rid of it, so we can take it off our books.
And that includes 14 cases of ammo.
Yeah, so in that case, all right, thank you for bringing that up. So what it is that we've, during our budget process, as we were sharpening our pencil, and our preliminary budget process, sorry, as we were sharpening our pencil and going through things, we noticed that we had the police go through and do an inventory of all of their ammo that they carry, and it turns out slowly but surely, the choice of weapons used to be like a 45 caliber, then it went to a 40, and now the sidearm of choice is a 9mm. Well,
Ammo's easier, that's why for 9mm.
right. But what it turns out is that when we went from 40 to 9mm, or when most of the officers went down to 9mm, we only have one officer that still carries a 40 caliber, but we have all this ammunition, which even if we went out to range day, the 4 times a year, it would probably take, I think we estimated like 32 years or something like that to get rid of all the ammo. It was just an absurd number, and so we don't need that ammo. And in talking with Chief and Deputy Chief Sacco, we do have good relations with a surplus supplier who could potentially give us at least, if not buy it outright from us, at least give us a credit so that the 9mm ammo that we use more often, we can use a credit towards that and offset our costs.
Were we able to coax this officer into switching to a different sidearm?
Unfortunately, because of the CBA, it is their preference.
Ah, okay.
So, but we still, even with getting rid of this, we do have enough ammo, so we don't have to buy any 40mm or 40 caliber ammo. 40.
All right.
Well, that's a different discussion. But anyway, so 40 caliber ammo, we project we probably won't need to buy ammo this year or even next year.
That's fair.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second,
Are we motioning on everything?
on everything
all in
on
one
the
batch?
list?
Okay.
Actually, if I can, there's,
Different?
what's that?
Is the ammo different or no?
No.
Okay.
No. I did want to point out one thing. At the very top, you see the Dodge Dakota. This is the old, well, we've kind of affectionately called the hoopty, because it had been falling apart slowly but surely. It's still got some life on it, and somebody could probably buy it for parts. But what we did is we did a internal movement of stuff. We have a SUV that's coming from the squad, the police department, that's going over to the Public Works. The truck that Jim used to drive, now Rob drives, is actually going to be shifted over to Daryl, and it's more suited for what Daryl needs to do in the Parks Department, which then made the pickup truck in the Parks Department that was recently bought. That too, and when we looked at it over 2 years, we only put 1,800 miles on it. Why have two vehicles, one for parks and one for the building department, when they both had very low mileage? So in-house, what we decided to do is take the newer truck from parks and make it the administration fleet, so that the building department, the administration, or if we have conferences to go to, or as well as the eventual new Parks and Rec director could use it as well. And then this way we actually get some more use out of it. In the meantime, we get rid of another vehicle. So we're kind of upgrading the fleet by getting rid of something and also consolidating. I guess, sorry, I took like 5 minutes when I probably should have said that.
Okay.
But just so
Makes
you
sense.
saw it and you wondered why.
And I believe this is gonna come up at the budget meeting?
It'll be brought up at the Parks Board meeting for sure.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they're
right.
gonna wonder where their truck went.
Well,
Well,
yeah, no, because Jay's
Really,
already
they ended up
talked.
inheriting a better truck, one that's more suited for what they need.
Well, no, Parks, it was Parks' truck.
Yeah, the
good
original
truck,
pickup truck, but
yeah.
the one that they're getting from Parks, or from Public Works is actually the one that they should have gotten. It's actually more suited, and it's actually a better vehicle for what they need.
Does Daryl feel that?
Actually,
Agree with that?
it's,
Daryl was given the option,
And-
he chose
the one from Public Works.
Oh,
Yeah.
So recognize that the four-wheel drive truck that was purchased by the Parks Department was only purchased as four-wheel drive because it was the only
right,
drive available. There was
Right.
not a
That time.
two-wheel drive
I remember
available at
that.
that time.
yeah.
Yeah, because they couldn't get anything.
And
Yeah.
because it's four-wheel drive, it's much higher lift,
Hmm.
which is, because the amount of in and out of the truck that is done through parks, it's less convenient.
Sounds good.
But it goes back to our main philosophy of trying to streamline the system and better use
The truck will
funds that we're
still
given.
be available for any department that needs
Correct.
to utilize it. It will just be managed by the administration department.
We just need a second.
I think didn't we have a second?
No.
Oh,
No, I cut everybody off.
Oh, well, then I'll second.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
so it's
All in favor?
fine. Aye.
Aye. Okay. Oh, yeah, now just a
Okay.
minor thing of issue of discussion on changing city clerk to an appointed position.
Correct, and so this is, and I will try to be brief on this one. So, as you all know, the city clerk position is an elected position, and then we also have an administrative assistant who is a regular full-time staff. Lori has had this job for 8 years. So she's actually done both roles because she is also the elected city clerk. What we're trying to do is, what I would like to do is move it, or put this question to the voters, because we have to pass it as a referendum, to remove the elected position and make it an appointed position. Part of that, as the memo also states, is that with technology advancing and with the growing demands on all city staff, it allows us to concentrate on getting someone in that role that has the necessary skills. And likewise, based on some past history prior to Lori getting here, with it being an elected position versus an appointed, should you have someone who violates rules, be it personnel or otherwise, really they have the option to resign rather than, or wait until the next election. By making it an appointed position, they would be subject to the same restrictions as everybody but the city council. So if they were to go out and violate some rules or personnel policies, they would be subject to termination.
So are you proposing that the administrative assistant would have the same responsibilities as the clerk?
So the first step is to get permission from, or get an okay by the voting public.
Okay.
And then what I would like to see as the next step is to merge those two positions into one. So instead of having two separate people, we have just
Right.
one person.
It's only by the mere fact that Lori, who is the city administrative assistant, also ran for city clerk, that
Oh,
the
yeah,
same
no, I know.
person holds that position.
Yeah, no, I
Prior
know
to
that.
that, it's always been two
Yeah,
separate
it was,
people.
yeah, Andy and,
Can I just
Chris
ask for my
Ferguson,
own
prior
knowledge?
to Andy, was also paid admin as well as an elected city clerk.
Okay, city
She
clerk.
did it, I think, for 2 terms.
okay.
Why does this need to go to ordinance? Or, I'm sorry, to vote?
Because
it's an
by
elected
state
position.
statute, it's an elected position. And so you have to do a referendum to approve removing it from the elected status to.
Didn't we have to do in a referendum when the treasurer's position was eliminated?
I believe city clerk is different than the treasurer, otherwise
Right.
they may have done it.
Because that was an elected position as well, and they did
Yes.
that by
That was simple by
ordinance.
ordinance, because I looked it up the other day. Because I thought we must have had a referendum, and when I couldn't find the referendum, then I found the ordinance where it was changed from elected to appointed.
And TJ verified it has to go to referendum?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious, just trying to eliminate some steps if we could, if the council wanted to choose to move
Many
forward.
cities do it the way we're proposing we want.
Unfortunately, I don't have that number. I'll apologize. Well, I saw in Lake County that out of the 52 communities, as of 3 years ago, 19 had already gone to appointed. And this is something that is starting to grow in momentum throughout the state because of the specialization that's starting to happen.
You will also see in some communities where they have a deputy city clerk that is a paid employee, as opposed to being an elected official.
So, this is something that, when I first got here and started to look at the whole city, that before I even brought it to here, I asked Lori's opinion, what she felt, and that's why I also asked Lori to show up tonight. So if you had any questions, what her opinion is, moving this from an elected to an appointed.
What is your opinion?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Most of your day-to-day function of the city clerk is done by your paid administrative assistant or by paid staff in general. And it's always been that way. Except for signing checks, attesting documents, most of the work is done by your paid staff.
So but any of the statutory stuff, because it's, I mean, that's part of the clerk has those statutory
Correct.
responsibilities, and so that's
That would just move over to the
over to the,
appointed
to the
position.
appointed, okay.
I mean, I do see the logic to this because, like you said, as this position becomes more technical, more specialized, and I mean, eventually Lori's gonna want to retire. So, hopefully not anytime soon. But it does, being that it's an elected position, I'm all for elected positions and I'm all for the democratic representative functions that we have. But that being the case, it's still a concern for competency level. Because yes, anyone can run and anyone can be elected, but would they be competent in that role as it becomes much more technical?
So one of the things is by leaving it elected, and it's in my memo, the last time you had more than one person run for this position was in 2001.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like ours, though. Not many contested.
And that is true, but at this particular position, it doesn't have any voting rights on any ordinances. It's more secretarial to some extent.
Do you think the county will ever go this way?
What's that?
The county clerks? Because they're probably the same way, aren't they?
Well,
You need to worry about the coroner first.
so my concern is here at the in trying to make our municipality, our administration run more efficiently, and this was something that was identified a year ago. As far as the county, we'll wait till you all run for county positions before that.
So if we were to approve this and it goes through referendum, this wouldn't take effect until the end of the next term?
So in theory, what'll happen is, and you put a clause in there that it will expire at or it will take effect at the end of the current person's term. So it would go on to the ballot in November.
Yeah.
It would, and assuming that it gets passed, then Lori would be the last elected clerk. And then if she were to retire, which we have words about that, but if she rides out the rest of her term.
Statue and, yeah.
Well, but if.
Or
if
potentially
were
she could be appointed.
Well, yeah, technically she could at that point. So, but if she were to, you put the verbiage in there, and this is something that TJ and I can work on, that let's say hypothetically it passes in November and she wants to retire from the clerk position, the elected clerk position, come January 1, then at that point it ceases to be an option for elected status.
It also makes sense so that, I mean, if, if whoever was in the clerk position as an elected official, if they were to step down suddenly or not be able to fulfill the duties, we would then have to have a special election. There'd be a period of time where we would have to, or, I mean, it becomes much more complicated as an elected official.
Right. And like hypothetically, you could have someone who runs to get on as the city clerk who opts not to fulfill everything to the level that Lori has done. And in that case, you literally would have 9 elected officials arguing against 1 elected official for potentially 4 years. Because you can't just fire an elected official.
Yeah.
You have to wait till the next term or do a recall, which that is expensive to do and it does not have a high probability of success.
No,
Yeah, and I think it's,
I think
you
this
know,
is
it
a wise
is,
idea to
like you
move
said,
towards this.
it's very specialized.
Yeah.
And it's someone with those good administrative skills that can keep all of this stuff organized and
So
keep us organized.
A lot of these things are set up from the situation from what it was in the 1800s.
correct.
And these dynamics change.
Correct.
And the checks and balances change. And I think this is one of those cases. So I'll make a motion to take this to the city council for approval.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
In the meantime, I'll see if TJ can come up with a draft so they can see it by council meeting. And, Matt, to your question, I'll try to finish getting
Thank
those
you.
numbers.
Any new business?
Microphone. I make a motion that we get 4 more microphones.
It's on the upcoming budget.
Should get one of those like cool, like the ones that you wear on your.
We have a lapel one, but it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, then you can
Oh,
walk
marketer.
around and make
Like
it
the
a
pop
TED
stars
Talk.
wear, when they have to dance around and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not dancing.
Depends how much money you're asking for.
That's true. Just the only new
Dance.
business is the update I mentioned earlier for the capital improvement plan, just for you
Yep.
to review and look over. If you have any questions, call me, email me, whatever. The only thing I wanted to know is that the pool pumps, I left blank because I wasn't sure the status of those. I have since found out the answer. We've replaced one. One of them we have purchased, but it hasn't been replaced because Ryan was waiting for some more equipment that he's requesting on this next upcoming budget because it kind of all goes together in installing that pump. So that's partially complete at this point. That's all.
Thank you. Any other new business? Nope. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Woo, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good job.
Thank you and good night.
Are we done streaming?